Hey, somebody needs to bush hog the roads. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to the Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. This week, the Professional Noticer is sponsored by WisdomHarbor.com. Hey, here are a couple of quick questions. First, how long has the public school system in your state been repeating the mantra, more money for education? And the second question, through the years, as they've gotten more money, how much has changed? Today, schools all over America are finding WisdomHarbor.com's one-of-a-kind web portal to be the perfect, low-cost, high-quality educational tool for their students. For less than $3 a month per teacher, classrooms have access to original content only found on WisdomHarbor.com that teaches, entertains, and builds character in young people. Utilizing video, audio, and the written word, content is delivered in small bites by Grammy winners, CEOs, comedians, chefs, best-selling authors, and Hall of Fame speakers. There are even guitar lessons from an award-winning songwriter. Check it out today and join your friends and neighbors who are already a part of WisdomHarbor.com. And isn't it time your school system got involved? WisdomHarbor.com. Observations and answers, that's what we do on the Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love it when somebody comes to the table with both. When we get somebody that has observations and answers, that's just awesome. And we have that today. And I'm actually a little nervous today because of my guest. How do I describe this person? This person is one of the 3 or 4 most important people in my life. And he is a big brother, a mentor, a coach, and he's Uncle Sandy to our boys. And he has done some extraordinary things in his life that have been a little bit undercover, maybe because I guess the whole world doesn't know about it, and I think they should. And so we're fixing to do that. Please welcome the mayor of Mobile, Alabama, Sandy Stimpson.
I'm not quite sure how to respond to that, but I'm humbled by what you say, because I think that when I think about people that have influenced my life, you're certainly one of those people also. So mutual admiration society, but I think you overbuild it. We'll see.
No, I did not overdo this. No. You know, the boys, obviously, they love you. You have been such a great influence in their life, and I've been able to even discipline them using what would Uncle Sandy do. There was one time that the boys, they were having a hard time getting up. You know, Polly she was just trying to get them up for school. They're in elementary school, and she was just like, they're driving me crazy because, you know, she's like, come on, get up. And, oh, just give us 5 more minutes. Oh, please. And so I had a meeting with them and said, guys, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to get up happy, and we're going to get up immediately. And I wouldn't ask you to do this if I didn't know that you could, because, you know, Mama gets all this pushback. But when you're at the hunting camp and Uncle Sandy turns on the light and slaps the wall at 4:30 and says, good morning, gentlemen. You guys get up and go, oh, hello, Uncle Sandy. Good morning. I said, so you do it for Uncle Sandy, you're going to do it for Mama.
Oh, that's too funny. I tell you what, with that in mind, I've got some grandchildren. I think that they're probably dragging around and getting out of bed. Maybe we need to try that, but we'll use Uncle Andy instead.
Yeah,
of
there
Sandy.
you go. There you go. Yeah. You know, I wanted to talk to you today about something that I don't think you get asked about much. And as the mayor of Mobile, you have a very visible family in South Alabama. And that the visibility from an outside thing would say, well, they're big businessmen, they have a lot of money, you know, or whatever. But I think it goes way deeper than that. And I think it has to do with how you were raised, how your parents were raised, how your children and your grandchildren are being raised. And there's a quick story that I want to relate to you guys that put me on this pathway of examining Sandy Stimpson's family. You know, when I found out, I started doing a little research on your family and Mr. Fred, who is your granddaddy. Right? And Mr. Fred was just a lumber guy. He was just a guy out in the woods, but he started having a vision with his 3 kids and his wife. And he said, one day we're going to do this. And he also told those 3 boys, you will get along. You are brothers, and you will get along. It's nothing more important than family. You will get along. And so now, meantime, in that same county, Clark County, my great-grandfather was there. At the same time, Mr. Fred, there was my great-grandfather. And my great-grandfather also had 3 boys in Clark County. And there wasn't a lot of vision, evidently, and there wasn't a lot of getting along. Because when my granddaddy opened a grocery store, the 2 guys the 2 other brothers, Walter Wild and Paul, opened hardware stores on the same street in Jackson. Yeah. Like 500 feet apart, okay? So it wasn't a lot of getting along. And there wasn't a lot of saying you would get along. And so, but I noticed that my family, every generation would kind of start over. Every generation is like, okay, you start over, here you go. But when we started going to the camp, and I saw Walter Wild was a member, because this camp that we go to the first camp started in 1923.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, Choctaw Bluff.
No, 25.
25, and then Howells Lake in 1940.
Yeah.
And so Walter Wild was a member of Howells Lake. And I'm seeing pictures of Walter Wild up on the wall. Well, in this little town, my daddy loved to hunt, but Walter Wild never took my daddy hunting. Never. And I grew up knowing Walter Wild, and nobody ever asked me up there. And so it was a thing that started me looking into what happened. So our family started over a generation, but their family, the Stimpson family, was given a vision, given a mission statement, and given a directive, and they were told, you will get along. You are going to get along. There were ways that some people would get out of line, discipline, bring them back in. But I am just shocked. And your family is that's what I aspire to. Because I looked at that and I said, somebody has got to throw the anchor on this generational thing, and I'm going to do it. I'm throwing the anchor, and this is going to start with me, and I'm going to be Mr. Fred. Yeah. And so what are your memories of that as a kid?
So, Andy, as my grandfather died when I was 5, so I really don't have just a couple of memories of him around Christmas
But his
time.
picture is up in every place.
Yeah, it is. And so I don't know a lot of actually how it happened, but what I do know was that he was passionate about hunting and fishing. And back in the time when he was born in 1889, and so in 1889, to make a living, you were probably farming, especially in this part of the world. You were either farming or you were in the timber business or you were a merchant of some kind, or possibly part of the clergy of the church. I mean, right. But the doctor, but you know what I'm saying. There were limited numbers of job opportunities, and so from a work ethic standpoint, I mean, being in the timber business is somewhat like farming. It's very hard work, and so he was a large man, and as you said, he had 3 sons and a daughter, but having been born in Marengo County, but being in the sawmill business, and sawmills moved from place to place. They would cut the timber and then they'd move the mill. But he came upon this place on the Alabama River, and he realized that it was special from the standpoint of game. And being an avid hunter at that time, and back at the time, goes back to the 1925s, there were virtually no, hunting regulations. It was kind of the Wild West. But he recognized that you had to protect the game, and so he was really instrumental in the Department of Conservation, the Alabama Wildlife Federation. I'm talking about the very beginnings of them, which kind of coincided with protecting wildlife in the nation in the 1930s. But my guess is that he was maybe unknowing the impact that it would have, but as he started accumulating properties and putting together hunting clubs, I mean, he had no land in these specific areas, and so it was making an arrangement with the property owner to hunt on their property. And, obviously today we call that leasing, and I'm sure it was called leasing back then, but I'm not sure what the trade was for what you gave to be able to hunt the property. Right. But anyway, so as time went on and he would take his boys hunting, they tell the story of that he worked until noon every Saturday, and they'd get off work and they would drive to the camp, and if they were some of these years, the 30s, let's say, they were driving up from Mobile. So it could take 2.5, hours to get there because of the road system. And so you'd get there just in time, maybe to hunt on Saturday afternoon and Sunday, and then come home. But that time that he spent with the boys in the woods, the lessons that he taught, I'm uncertain of, other than from a discipline standpoint. If you're turkey hunting, they love to tell the stories about sitting there in a turkey blind and being bored to death, and you're 9 or 10 years old and you're breaking sticks. And on more than one occasion, I think a backhand came across the turkey blind to sort it out. So, you understood who the boss was. There was no doubt about who the boss was. My grandfather evidently was one of these guys. If you walked in the room, his presence, everybody kind of knew that he was there. And
Mr.
Fred. And he was able, through personality and leadership, to put together these hunting clubs and ask friends and family to join. But he also recognized, not being a golfer, that he could use hunting to make the same relationships or build the same relationships that people did on the golf course or other means of outing. So through hunting and fishing, learning how to entertain people, most of the time it was really, but there were two reasons that my grandfather did that, as I understand it. One was to promote the conservation of game and fish in the state of Alabama, and the other was for business reasons. So the people that he would invite to be club members were influential business people or individuals in the community or even in the state to come there. And so growing up, his sons saw that. But there were lessons learned about, hard work, about getting along, and how he really, other than because he was solo, let's say. He wasn't working with his brothers.
Right.
And so how he showed them that they needed to get along, because the age difference, let's say if my father, at age 50, one brother was 45 and the other brother was 40. So big span in age.
Right.
And they realized, though, that if working together, they had something. But if they started thinking that, well, we're just going to divide this up and I'm going to take my marbles and go to the house, or I'm going to go get this 40 acres, I think that just dawned on them that being a team, that they could get more done. And there wasn't a whole lot of teaching or coaching, I'm going to say, into my generation. We were seeing it. We were watching it.
But you were also part of the conversations.
Yes,
because we in our generation, we wanted to be at the big table.
Yeah.
And our parents would say, you can sit there as long as you're quiet.
Yeah. And so, when you feel around the camp, The boys sat on the floor. You didn't ever sit in a chair. That was for the men. And the other lessons learned about respect, and it wasn't just respect for the businessmen and the members of the club. It was respect for everybody that was there, whether they were cooking in the kitchen or skinning deer, whatever the deal was. So I would say, Andy, how we have carried on over the years, I would have to say some of that is a divine intervention, is grace of God, because every family has the challenges. I mean, we have our challenges too, but I still believe there's something that we grew up believing, and this is Sandy personally. This is not, I can't speak for my cousins and my siblings, but I loved going to our retreat, okay, to the hunting camp. And some reason, as I was growing up, age 14, 15, 16 in there, I thought, I really don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to cause a situation whether, it's underage drinking or having a wreck and creating a real problem for my family that could cause us to have to divide things. And so that may sound really strange or corny, but I didn't want to be that one. I wanted to see what I could do to make sure that we tried to stay together and would continue working together, because I too could see the benefit of doing so. And as I looked around at other families, they didn't have what we had,
right?
And I'm sure there were people that had more than what we had. I'm 100% sure of that. But there was something about the love of the land, the opportunities to recreate and have fun, and cut up and be devilish, and just be boys.
Yeah.
And we had girl cousins too, and so there weren't many. There were 14 in my generation. And I would say that growing up, we got along really, really well. Now, initially there weren't but probably 6 or 8 of us that were about close to the same age. And then the ages kind of, as they spread out, I can't say that the oldest ones really knew the youngest ones, but somehow we all recognized that we needed to work together to stay together. I'll say this, Andy, too, that there was planning done that I think that was very instrumental in making it easy to keep things together. And so at my father's generation, and they started thinking about how do we move all this to the next generation and the next generation, knowing that all of us have different needs. And so if you own property, let's just say you have 1,000 acres, and so there are 10 of us that have the 1,000 acres. Well, as we grow up, my financial needs are different than my sisters or my brothers. And so here I own my share of 1,000 acres, and 9 of them don't need money maybe, so they don't want to cut any timber. Okay? Well, I need money, so I want to cut my timber. Well, recognizing that would create a divide because that one me needing the money. So my father and them, they tied everything together through hunting rights in a very long period of time so that we could all, hunt the property. But from an ownership standpoint, the property was divided so that if my father chose to cut his timber and he chose to cut it for monetary reasons or for timber management reasons, he didn't have to go ask his brothers and sisters for permission to do that. He just did it, And I think that helped perpetuate it through another generation or two, okay? Because typically, if you jointly own something with somebody and you need cash or whatever, or you need cash flow, and you can't get it, that's a wedge that will separate you. Yeah. And that's from people that are in the farming business, maybe the timber business, and so how do you divide that? But that's part of the story that comes to mind.
That was one of the things that when the boys were young, I think that was an aha moment for them when we're saying, you will get along, you're going to be brothers a lot longer than Mom and I are going to be around. And one day, we were riding in the Polaris, and Austin or Adam one said, "Wow, Uncle Sandy owns all this," and I said, "Well, no, he doesn't really own all of it." He said, "Well, this is a lot of places. We get to go on all of it." And I said, "Right." I said, "It's because Uncle Sandy and Mr. Fred and Mr. Richard and Miss Pam get along. Because, like I said, this territory that we hunt in, that is owned by Richard. And then this territory is owned by Pam. And but they're all next to each other, and they work as a team."
Yeah. Yeah. Andy, I don't know why it just came to mind when you were talking about that. My grandfather, there was a boss. I mean, there wasn't any doubt. When he was alive, he was the boss. And then he had 3 hunting clubs, and so one uncle was in charge of one, another in charge of another, and my father in charge of one of them. And kind of no matter where you were, so let's just say what comes to mind, and one of my uncles talked about how we operate the club. And he would say it was a benevolent dictatorship. And that nobody was confused that he was the dictator.
Right.
But he would also follow up and say, "I can do, whatever I want to do as long as my 2 brothers agree." And he would say that. And so, I remember it. And what I realized today is that, yes, I can go do whatever I want up there as long as the family agrees,
Right.
And that's just kind of how it is. But that's, again, planting some of those little seeds along the way that you reflect upon, as now we find ourselves in a position of what are we going to do for the 4th, 5th, and 6th generation. Yeah.
That's it's fascinating because those 3 brothers, it was Billy, who was your dad, Mr. Billy, and Mr. Ben, and Dut.
Yeah.
And those were the three brothers. And then Nedra?
Yeah. No, Mary Frances was the sister, Mary Frances Shackelford.
Mary Frances. Mary
Mitch's
Frances.
mom.
See, I'm putting this together now. There is a stand in West Carlton, and the stand is named Mary Frances.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so great. And the way that there's an old saying that if you teach your kids how to hunt and fish, then when they turn 16, you won't be wondering where they are. And that was certainly the case for us. I mean, when we turned 16, there were kids who they would just be driving around, but we were like, "You mean I can go hunt and fish by myself? I can go by myself.
Yeah.
And just me and my buddies can go." And so that's what we did. And I look at that time, and you were very generous to me, you and Fred, very generous to me to invite me to be a member of that club when you did. You knew my boys were very young. And I tell people today that deer hunting is a really, really, really important part of raising a kid. Whether you take a gun or a camera, whether you intend to kill anything, whether you intend to eat any of it or not, that is very important because it is the only thing that I can find in today's world where an adult and a child can sit close together in a box, and they're looking out, and there's no video games, there's no phones, there's nothing going on, and it's just for a couple of hours you're sitting there with a kid, and you're able to whisper, and that child can ask questions, you can talk, you can tell stories, and not to run this into another thing, but I always remember we were in West Tucker, that territory, and Adam asked me one day, he was like 7 years old, and he said, "Dad, what is abortion?" And if I'd have been at home, I'd have said, What? Where'd you hear that word? What? Wait, hang on just a second. Have you talked to your mother about that? Okay. Let me. I want to do something. I'll be right back. And it would have thrown me for a loop. But he asked me that question. He was patient with my answer because he knew we weren't going anywhere. I had time to say, God, please tell me what to say, and to formulate an answer, and to talk to him about that in a way that set what he believes about that topic to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think because, when you're fishing, my dad and I would fish together. And when we're fishing, you're in one end of the boat, he's another end of the boat, or you're on one side of the pond, and you're yakking and talking. It's not an intimate thing, and so the idea of hunting and being quiet. And I remember one time we got out of the Polaris and Adam or Austin talked. They were talking loud, and you said to them, you said, "Shh, come here." And you said, "You know how your mama doesn't want you to yell or be loud in the house?" I said, "Yes, sir." So, well, we're in God's living room here. This is where the animals live, and they don't like us to be loud in their house either. Man, and of course, up at the camps, there is that thing you mentioned before about the boys sitting on the floor or sitting on the steps, and the men sit and everybody shakes hands when they come.
Oh, yeah.
And do you know, I'm just going to tell you this. I have laughed for years. My boys so revere that time and that place that we will go up there, sometimes in midweek by ourselves, and there's nobody there. And there's that ring of chairs around the fireplace, ring of nice chairs. My boys
wouldn't sit on it.
Will not sit in those chairs. And so it was a couple of months ago when we were up there, and you were there, and I, out of the corner of my ear, Austin was over sitting in the kids' bleachers, and you were sitting in one of the rocking chairs, and you said, "Austin, come here, sit." And he stood up, and you said, "Sit down." And he said, "There?" You said, "Yeah." And he was like, "Okay." And so at 23 years old, he sat down there, and I thought, what a moment.
Well, and when you say that, it makes me think about being boys and sitting on the floor, sitting on the chairs. I think until I was about 25 or 30, I didn't feel like I was old enough to sit in a chair. I needed to sit on a bench on the back row, so maybe that's good or bad. I want to go back to your hunting, though, and being, alone with your son or a nephew or a son of a friend or whatever. It has changed a lot. And so now they do take Game Boys, they take things to stands, but that's a choice that somebody's making. I mean, you can either choose to sit there and engage in a conversation with them or let them take something to occupy their time. And I think it's very difficult now to have that one-on-one time with a child. But when they're not doing something, playing on some device. And so, we're fortunate and are blessed to be able to have those opportunities of one-on-one. But you can also squander those opportunities by, just acting like it's just, you're going to sit over there and do your thing, and I'm going to sit here and do my thing,
right.
And within 3 feet of each other. But so it's not. It takes a mindset that I want to take advantage of the opportunity. So we are just fortunate to have had good role models, because back when I was a child, there were no shooting houses. It was illegal to shoot over a green field. I mean, so it was deer drives, but you would be sitting next to your daddy, your uncle on a stand in deer drive, and you would be getting, tutelage from them about what you were supposed to be doing.
Right.
About not moving. And so you learn patience, you learn discipline, you learn all kind of things, and respect for the woods, and also I think that you can't not participate in that and have a sense of gratitude. And I'll tell you a story that just happened this week, and I want to just grab my phone real quick just to make sure that I'm exactly right when I tell you this. So the other night, this was maybe Tuesday night, I get a text from one of my 13-year-old grandsons, and Gene had just asked me if I was going to go hunting this weekend. And I was kind of going to go to the camp, but I wasn't going to really go hunting until I got this text. And it says, if you're going to the camp this weekend and are looking for a guest, I'd love to go with you. Well, that's from Sam. So when I looked at it, I thought, you betcha.
Yeah,
if he wants to go to the camp with me, now I'm sure there's some other boys who are going to be up there that he can have a good time with. And they're going to have fun. It ain't just about being with his grandfather, okay? Right. You know, I got more sense than that to think that that's what he wants to do. But there's an opportunity that we'll be in the car together, riding up the road. I'll be able to choose whatever subject we want to talk about, and also hopefully plant some seeds that'll help him as he gets older. But anyway, I look forward to that. But that's pretty cool.
You know, to have a place, to have a home place, a home base. You know, everybody goes hide and seek in their life, and then, hey, I made it home base. A place you come back to.
Yeah.
And to provide that as an adult, that you know that even when they get older, they want to come back. They want to participate in what you did, and they want their children to participate. You know, I had an unusual thing happen to me that I've never forgotten, and it was at your mama's funeral. We were, you had the greeting, the visitation in that fellowship hall down below, and then people came up and so the family was in a line, and people would come and shake hands. And after the funeral, I was coming down the steps of the church, and there were two ladies behind me, and one of them said to the other, did you go and speak to the family before the funeral? And she said, yes, I did. And the first one said, have you ever seen that big a family in your life? And I thought, everybody's family is that big. It's just they don't get along well enough to show up in one place at one time and everybody see how big they are. And so every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, I find out how many people came. How many people came to Thanksgiving this year?
So I'm going to back up just for a minute if I can.
All right.
So, we've talked about my father and his two brothers and sister. Well, a whole lot of credit has to be given to the spouses.
Right.
Visualize this. There's a home that was built in 1890, let's just say. And it's got 6 bedrooms in it. And so there were, my grandfather and grandmother had a room, and each of their children, of the 4 children, had a bedroom. And and when I was growing up, we'd sleep either in the bedroom with my parents, but we were all in the same house. And that went on from I was born in 1950. My sister was born in 1949, so that went all the way up to the 1970s. So to share a house, the spouses, they probably maybe get more credit than anybody for tolerating that craziness, of going up and spending a weekend with your in-laws and doing that. But anyway, you learn to respect your aunts and your uncles, and you do what they say just like you do what your parents say. So I want to make sure I put that in because it's hugely important, because my brothers and I, we may try to get along and we may be determined to get along, but if our spouses, for whatever reason, they just don't like being with my brothers and sisters, then you got a problem. I mean, it makes it doubly challenging. And so in my siblings, we are blessed beyond measure that my brother-in-law and my 2 sisters-in-law and my wife, they get along just unbelievably well. They call themselves the outlaws,
Wow.
because they're not the in-laws, but the outlaws. Anyway, so going back to Thanksgiving, that I can remember, there was initially there were like 5 of us, 5 grandchildren. We were at the little table, and all the adults were at the big table. That would have been 10 of them, okay? And there were like 5 of us at the time when we first started. Well, this past Thanksgiving, there were 132 for Thanksgiving lunch, and there was only one guest. Everybody else was, either a lineal descendant or married to one. Okay, but there are I think there's 172 of us, or 74 of us now, but we have it all. I mean, there's a database with everybody's birthday and all that kind of stuff, and everybody's address, phone numbers, and how to contact and all that. But this year, for the first year, we had to put name tags on some of the.
Oh, no, really?
Well, I mean, yeah. So because we're scattered now, and we don't all show up there on the weekends like we used to, and the proliferation of those that are under 6, it's hard to keep all the names straight.
Right. Yeah.
But we had a great time, and we all, it's kind of buffet. But we have to run a big tent and have a bunch of tables, and but it was a lot of fun, and that's just one of those memories and because it is fun, and if there's contention going on, it's not there in the group.
Right.
So I am grateful for my cousins and siblings that work hard, at trying to create the environment so that we can get together and do so on an entertaining basis. Okay, right. But I'll also go back to this. I think one of the keys for our family has been that my father and his 2 brothers, they were in business together, and they ate lunch together I bet at least 4 out of 5 days a week, instead of maybe going to a club to have lunch or going to, wherever they would go. And so they were always conversing about business, but a lot of the time was, what are we going to do at the hunting camps? How do we handle this? And what are we going to do about that? And who's going to be a member? And so they have an advantage I would say that's a huge advantage, okay? And so today, we're scattered. We don't have that central lunch place with the company because we sold the company. And so I see that makes it more challenging for us to communicate and the left hand to know what the right hand is doing. But to that end, the generation younger than me, they recognize that because they were small when they knew what my father and them how well they communicated. So the generation younger than us is saying, y'all need to get together more often and communicate so you're on the same page. And so
right.
We're pushing to do that. We have a meeting next week with some of us to make sure that we do that. But it becomes more challenging with each successive generation.
Well, I saw your Christmas card, and with you and Jean and Sands and Billy and Nancy and
Virginia
and Garner, and all the kids, and I kept that up in our kitchen for a long time, and Polly and I would look at that and say, that's how it can be. And so I appreciate you taking this time with me, and we could talk for hours about this, and maybe we need to at some point, but I just want to thank you for being an influence, an example in my life. You have, if you hadn't done anything anywhere else, Andy, you have done something in my life, in the life of my family.
Well, Andy, you're mighty kind to say that, and I take that as a huge compliment, but I can't hold a candle to what you've done, the lives that you have impacted with all that you do every day. When you talk about that Christmas card, for those that don't know, I have 4 children and 14 grandchildren. And when we sent the Christmas card out, we had people, respond either verbally or whatever, and they said, you took it serious when he said, "Go forth and multiply."
Hey, one question I want to ask you before we go. Tell me about your family mission statement.
Yeah. So, probably matter of fact, it's probably almost 25 years ago, I called the children together. It'd been on my mind, what are we about? What are we supposed to do? How do we all focus on the same thing? Because we know, but for a vision, the people are going to wander and go astray and so forth.
Right, you're living life on purpose.
That's right. So, really, I crafted what I thought would be a mission statement, worked over it for a period of time, and then got the children together. And, of course, at that time, they were ages 19 to 9. And I think that, the last thing they were thinking about was a mission statement, that they didn't understand why I would want to be doing that. But what it is to arise each day to love, serve, and glorify God, to live by the highest standards of moral character, to cherish, respect, and defend one another at all times, and to, lost the last line, but anyway, to live by the high standards of moral character.
And to be good stewards.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. You know my mission statement better than I do. I can't believe I had brain cramp. But so to be good stewards of the gifts, the resources, and responsibilities entrusted to us. And so that part about to cherish, respect, and defend one another at all times, that probably, as a matter of fact, it wasn't probably, that was because I recognized that if they can get along, that they'll be much more successful in life. And then the last part about being good stewards of the gifts, the resources, and the responsibilities entrusted to us. That's what we're all four sentences of it. I just think that what everybody's kind of called to do. Yeah.
Buddy, thank you. I am sure we have not had a more important podcast than this one. And I think this is going to touch a lot of people. It's going to gear up a lot of people. And I appreciate so much your time.
Hey, I'm honored to be here. This is good stuff. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing that tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limbert. The Noticer theme, written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Brim bed locations for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional funding provided by WhenIWasYourAge.com. Friends, have you just run out of things to say to your kids when you're aggravated and want to get a point across? What better method to get the point across than to compare how they are doing things to when you were doing them better and faster? That's where we come in, a monthly subscription to WhenIWasYourAge.com, and your troubles are over. You'll be channeling your grandmother when you hear things coming out of your mouth like, "When I was your age, we didn't talk disrespectfully," or "When I was your age, we enjoyed going to church," or even, "When I was your age, we didn't wear hats indoors." Once you have all the stage 1 responses memorized, we step you up in what you are able to present. You'll learn phrases like, "When I was your age, we didn't do facial piercings," or "When I was your age, we only smoked cigarettes." And of course, "When I was your age, I had to listen to my grandparents tell me how it was when they were my age." So keep the tradition alive. Subscribe today. WhenIWasYourAge.com.